Hello YouTube, this is Sam Gerrans from Coranite.com, and today I'm going to talk about the similarities between Islam and democracy. And these notes come from my blog, so I'm going to be reading a bit and perhaps just extemporizing a little bit as I go along. So, Islam is a lot like democracy. That statement might surprise you, but let me explain. I don't say that Islam and democracy are similar superficially, but they have some very concrete underlying areas of correspondence. Firstly, they are both usurping ideologies. The United States, whence definitions and impositions of democracy hail, was not created as a democracy. It was created as a republic, with a constitution and Bill of Rights, laws set in stone and immovable, no matter how many fools could be drummed up to vote against their own inalienable rights. Likewise, Islam is a religion which, if we hold it to its narrowest definition, fundamentally usurps the foundation upon which it claims to be based, i.e. the Quran, since such a definition is nowhere found within its pages. Secondly, both democracy and Islam require doublethink on the part of the adherent. Let's take democracy first. We all know there's a tension or conflict between the underlying principles which the laity in the Church of Democracy assumes to lie at the base of this religion, and it is a religion. On the one hand, most people feel that democracy is about reasonable people sitting around and making informed judgments on the right course of action. But nothing could be further from the truth, as we all know. Democracy is a form of corporatized satanic hypocrisy, the object of which, at least currently, is to mask a cultural Marxist agenda designed to destroy you, not only in this life, but in the life to come. And in order to believe in democracy, one needs to be able to disassociate himself from the reality of what it is to live in a godless, meaningless kleptocracy, governed by liars and psychopaths who serve an unspoken agenda and hidden masters. In order not to see this conflict, one needs to look only at one part of democracy at a time and not to relate any of its features to all the other parts. Once you begin to form a coherent picture in the mind, any claim that democracy is a righteous form of government falls apart. But because people inherently want to see themselves as righteous, and because democracy by definition feeds into that desire for self-delusion and self-aggrandizement, most people will not do due diligence on the fundamentals of what it is they say they believe. And this is why democracy is the preferred smokescreen for our rulers at this time. It's based upon the correct assumption that the majority is lazy and stupid and has no intellectual or moral spine. Islam is not identical in its mechanics on this point, but there is a lot of overlap. The rhetoric of brand Islam, and by brand Islam I mean really the main schools of Sunni or perhaps even Shia Islam, based fundamentally on hadith and completely disassociated from the Quran, except by virtue of the fact that they need to sort of arrogate to themselves some sort of monopoly over the Quran. They don't really engage with it. What they're really governed by, what they're really driven by is the hadith. So that's what I'm talking about here. It too can only be believed in bits. And if you join those bits up, it's quite clearly nonsense and fails to meet any of its associated claims when seen as a whole. But to remain within the ranks of the believers, i.e. safe, and not stoned to death, one has to pretend to believe things which are either mutually contradictory or simply outright nonsense. And in that sense, it has a great deal in common with democracy, especially as intoned by political correctness. Anyone who's been alive in the last 20 or 30 years clearly must understand that democracy is a sort of form of mental illness. On the one hand, we're all the same, but on the other hand, we're all unique. On the one hand, all our rights are important, but on the other hand, if you're a Palestinian, we can bomb you and kill you. It's ludicrous, of course. Thirdly, both democracy and Islam have enough good-sounding stuff within them at any one time for well-intentioned, generally good people who are not willing to do their own due diligence to cling to them and feel snug and warm. The road to hell is paved with good intentions, not bad ones, a fact which Satan knows well. Fourthly, both Islam and democracy are moving targets. What I mean by that is that whatever democracy is supposed to be moves about depending on which countries the New World Order currently wants to destroy militarily or culturally or both. And something similar is the case with Islam. What constitutes Islam can be expanded or contracted on the basis of a long beard and a smattering of charisma, and before you know it, you have a nice conflict underway. That's not to say that both Islam and democracy do not have core definitions. They kind of both do, but those definitions are in actuality subsumed by later accretions, and they school enough of their respective laities into intellectual stupor as to render any grown-up analysis impotent or simply browbeat it out of the public arena. Clearly, Islam has been imported into the West to confuse and to destroy it. I'm talking about the West here. But Islam itself is confused and destroyed. It has no connection with any scripture. You should see other posts on my site, Quranite.com, for details on this. No matter how it wraps itself in the banner of the Quran, any serious study of whatever it is people mean by Islam, if you actually batten it down, hammer it down, it has no connection. A very good test with this is I came across Jehovah's Witnesses. I always warn Jehovah's Witnesses when they start on me, I say, look, you've got me on my specialist subject here. So save your own time. If you're looking for converts, go somewhere else. If you want to come see me, expect an argument that you're probably not going to be able to win. And that's the case. I mean, but they always come. They always give them their due. They're always up for a challenge. But what I do with Jehovah's Witnesses is I just make them give me an answer on something, and then I write it down and I say, right, is that your answer? Get them to initial it. And I just collect a few answers. And after you've got about 4 or 5 of them, they can't continue to argue with you anymore because you've actually got their signature on these answers. What I'm trying to say is their presentation only seems to make some sense on a very piecemeal and superficial and frankly intellectually really ignorant level. If you hammer them down and say, right, is that your position on this? And they say yes, they can't answer the 3rd or the 7th or the 12th question without contradicting themselves back there. This is what Islam, whatever it is, does, and it's also what democracy, whatever it is, does. Once analysed systematically, and now I'm talking about Islam, it very quickly becomes clear that it has its genesis in a later usurping literature called the Hadith. So in terms of underlying psychological mechanics, the means by which each religion, and I'm talking here about Islam and democracy, impact the mind and preclude it from any genuine or sustained contemplation of its nature, Islam and democracy have much in common. You need to have cauterized your core mental processes in a similar way to believe either. How democracy is anathema to constitutional republicanism is well documented, and it's not the main focus of either my site or my YouTube presentations. Other posts on my site at Quranite.com demonstrate that Islam, as per its foundational definition, is anathema to the Quran. In closing, it's my opinion that the ruling elite understand very well that in order to achieve the sort of meltdown they want in the formerly white Christian countries, they need to import an alien virus with enough in common with the host virus for cross-contagion to take place, and thus further mutual corruption and the complete implosion, I would say, of both cultures. That's all for now. If you're listening on YouTube, you can download my full translation of the Quran free using the button in the top right-hand corner. I also encourage you to sign up for the Quranite Plus newsletter on the site to get occasional micro updates. Like if you like, comment if you have something to say, and subscribe to get more each week. And remember, this life is short, eternity is long. If you want good trees, plant good seeds.